So for the month of January, I did a no buy, no spend challenge. And what that means is that I restricted all of my spending to essential items only. So things like food and bills and petrol, I could still purchase all of those items, but any spontaneous, non-essential spending was strictly verboten. So no running out and buying things like clothes and house decorations and takeaway coffees. And those are all the things that I actually really like to spend my money on. So in this video, I'm going to chat about my experience doing that challenge, what I learnt, and what some of the roadblocks were. So in terms of how it went, this was my first ever no buy, no spend challenge, and it was actually a lot easier than I was expecting it to be. So I wouldn't call myself a compulsive shopper. I don't really live a very large, luxurious life. That's not my style. But I do like to just randomly buy myself funny little items and curios that I find around the place. And I also really like to spend a bit of my time in random antique stores and op shops looking for one-of-a-kind objects. So for me, this challenge sort of had two elements to it. The first one was the self-restraint that came around the spending of money. The second was actually finding things to fill my time when I may have been shopping for something. In terms of the self-restraint, I did okay. There were 3 days when I wound up making purchases I shouldn't have made. 2 of those days were takeaway coffees, and the reason I made those purchases was because I had spent time down the Gold Coast with a friend, and I wasn't in my home where my coffee machine was available, so store-bought was kind of my only option there. And I am not going to go a day without a cup of coffee. That's just not an option that's on the table for me. The third day was actually towards the end of the challenge, and I wound up buying a couple of bottles of sparkly nail polish. And while out of context that does seem a little bit strange, it does kind of make sense in context, and I will expand on that a little bit later. In terms of finding things to do to fill my time when I would have gone out and distracted myself shopping, one of the big things I did was look up and rewatch old movies and TV shows that I had loved when I was younger. And this was a really fun thing to do. I rediscovered stuff that I had really loved, and some of it had aged very well, some of it had not, but it was still good fun. However, I think I learnt one of my first lessons when I did this, and that is that I am really easily influenced by things I see in movies and shows. So for instance, I rewatched a movie I had loved when I was a teen called Fools Rush In. It has Selma Hayek in it, and I loved her when I was younger, and still do, by the way. But I watched this movie and then immediately wanted her character's entire wardrobe. I also rewatched The Gilmore Girls. I don't even know how many times I have seen this show, but when I rewatched it, I immediately wanted all of Lorelai's clothes. And also the house that she lives in, but that's a different sort of spontaneous purchase. So it was interesting for me to realize just exactly how much the things I see on TV influence my spending habits. I genuinely had no idea that once I saw it in a movie and I liked it, I would go and try and find it myself. So that was interesting and mildly terrifying given how much I watch TV. Second road bump that I ran into was the fact that I don't cook terribly well, and I wasn't allowed to buy any takeaway food or convenience food. And so I did find myself over the course of the challenge becoming mildly disinterested in food, and that was a little worrying. But I did push through, and it's not like I stopped eating altogether. I just really didn't look forward to meals and didn't always finish what I had made myself. But that was something that I was conscious of. However, I'm trying to cut down on convenience and takeaway foods anyway, and so my diet is a little bit in flux at the moment, irrespective of this challenge. The third roadblock that I experienced sort of relates to the nail polish, in that a lot of the spontaneity and a bit of the fun of life goes away when you do a challenge like this, and I was starting to get a little bit, I don't know, melancholy, I suppose you would say, that yeah, just some of this fun had gone away. So I wound up going out and buying a bunch of glitter, specifically glitter that goes on my fingernails, and that helped a little bit. It was just a really cheap, really small purchase that just sort of bolstered my spirit a bit and helped me get to the end of this challenge. But that's something to be cognizant of if you're going to do a challenge like this. It is sort of a deprivation challenge, and you need to be prepared for that. It might not be the most fun challenge to do, but it does very possibly have a very good payoff at the end. So one of the big lessons I learned from doing this is that I cannot go to the shops when I'm doing something like this, because I will inevitably find things I want to buy, and then I will get mildly upset when I can't buy them. So it's good to avoid all sorts of malls, all sorts of op shops, anything, any sort of trigger area where you might find things that you would really like. I would just avoid them for the month that you do this, so that you don't elicit those kinds of emotions and make your life harder. Second lesson I learned was that making coffee at home is not as difficult as I thought. So I found a really good recipe for a caramel iced coffee pretty early on in the game, and was able to make that for myself most days, and that worked just fine for me. So giving up the takeaway coffees was actually really easy, and I was not expecting that. I was expecting that to be a very big deal. And the third lesson I learned is that life and bills just kind of happen anyway. About a third of the way through the challenge, the registration for my car was automatically deducted from my bank account, and that was hundreds of dollars. So while I probably saved hundreds of dollars doing this challenge, I also had to spend hundreds of dollars on a bill that was due this month. I possibly broke even. I have not been particularly anal in tracking my spending in other months, so it's hard to see how much I saved this month. I'm guessing I saved about $150 on coffees, because the average coffee in Australia is about $6 now, and probably about $50 on takeaway breakfast. And all of these are conservative estimates of how much I've saved. And then in terms of spontaneously trying to buy clothes and things for the house, I've probably saved a couple of $100s. So while I spent a couple of $100 on my rego, I probably saved a couple of $100 from my no spend. So my guess is I broke even for the month. So all up, I would do this challenge again. I actually found it a lot easier than I thought I would, and a lot less stressful. And I think I've decided that I'm actually going to continue the no spend challenge for the rest of the year, but I'm going to limit it to clothes. So I have enough clothes to last me at least a year, and I would like to wear some of them out so that I can replace them with something I like better. I don't really love the idea of just throwing things in landfill or just wasting money. So I'm going to try and get a little bit of wear out of stuff, and then maybe next year start fresh with a new wardrobe. So yeah, I would recommend this. I would give it maybe 7 out of 10 stars, and good luck if you want to do it yourself. So I'll see you on the next one. Bye.